The storm had rolled in earlier than forecasted, blurring the edges of the small town of Braden Hill with rain thick enough to feel like static in the air. By 10:17 p.m., Riverglass Road, the long, unlit stretch that split the woods east of town, had gone eerily quiet. Only a few cars used it at night, mostly the lonely or unlucky. Darius Holt was neither. A 32-year-old mechanic who had once dreamed of starting his own custom shop, he mostly used Riverglass Road as a shortcut home after late shifts. It spared him 10 minutes. 10 minutes mattered when you worked 12-hour days. He didn't see the patrol car at first. The cruiser was tucked behind a copse of pines, lights off, engine idling low. Only when Darius passed did the headlights slice through his mirrors. White, bright, accusing. Darius sighed. "Come on, man." "Not tonight," he muttered, easing his old Honda Civic to the shoulder as the blue and reds erupted behind him. He already knew the ritual. Hands on the wheel. Dome light on. Window halfway down. He kept his breathing steady. The cruiser door slammed. Boots approached. A flashlight beamed into his face like an interrogation lamp. "Evenin'," the officer said. The name tag caught in the light read Kaplan. Officer Mark Kaplan, 41, pale and heavy-jawed, known around town for a strictness that some called professionalism and others called something else. Darius knew him by reputation. "Are you in a hurry?" Kaplan asked, voice as cold as the rain. "No, sir." "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, sir." Kaplan walked around the car slowly, shining his flashlight through each window as though expecting to find a body or a stash of weapons. Darius followed the beam nervously. "Your left tail light's dim," Kaplan said finally. Darius blinked. "Sir, I checked it this morning. It's fine." Kaplan's lip twitched. "Are you calling me a liar?" "No, sir. Just, it's been working. I can show you. Step out of the vehicle." The words punched the air out of Darius's lungs. He swallowed and complied. Rain soaked his jacket instantly. Kaplan stood too close, close enough for Darius to see the tiny lines around his eyes, the irritation that rested there like sediment. "You from around here?" Kaplan asked. "Born in Ashton, moved here 5 years ago." Kaplan nodded slowly, but something behind his eyes sharpened. "Got ID?" Darius handed over his license. Kaplan examined it too long, as though reading between the lines for something incriminating. "You carry any weapons, Mr. Holt?" "No, sir." "Any drugs?" "No." "Mind if I check?" Actually, he did mind. But he knew the game. Push back even a little, and the situation might turn explosive. "Go ahead," Darius said quietly. Kaplan searched the car with a vigor that bordered on hostile. Every compartment opened. Every bag unzipped. He even popped the trunk without asking. When he finally stepped back, empty-handed, frustration rippled across his face. "Looks clean," he said. Darius forced a smile. "'Cause it is." Kaplan didn't like the remark. His jaw flexed. For a moment, the rain seemed to pause between them. "Watch that attitude," he said. Then, with no farewell, he walked back to the cruiser. The lights flicked off. Kaplan peeled away into the night, leaving Darius trembling in the storm. He drove home with damp sleeves and a knot in his stomach. Something about that stop felt worse than usual. Something colder. Hours later, at 2:13 a.m., neighbors would call 911 to report gunshots echoing from Riverglass Road. By dawn, a body would be found in the mud. And by evening, an innocent man would become the town's prime suspect. Detective Hannah Ruiz had investigated grisly crimes before, but something about this one unsettled her deeply. The victim lay face up near the tree lean, soaked in blood and rainwater. Early 30s. Black man. No wallet. No phone. But one thing stood out. The victim looked like he had been running. Boot prints in the mud suggested someone had chased him. A single set of larger prints followed his, closing in. "This wasn't random," Ruiz murmured to her partner, Detective Colin Mercer. "This was targeted." Mercer crouched beside the body. "Gunshot wounds to the chest. 3 rounds. Close range. The killer wanted to make sure he stayed down. Execution style? Ruiz nodded. Feels like it. Riverglass Road was already taped off, the area crawling with techs and patrol units. Reporters swarmed the edges like flies kept at bay by yellow plastic. Identification? Mercer asked. Nothing yet. Ruiz stood and folded her arms. But I have a feeling. Yeah. We'll know soon enough. They did. The victim wasn't from the area. His name was Samuel King, a traveling sales rep from Fairfield County. His rental car had been found further down the road, still running, driver's door open. A bag of groceries sat in the passenger seat, untouched. Something had scared him enough to run. Something, or someone. By noon, whispers had already turned into narratives. People wanted answers. Fear demanded a villain. And in Braden Hill, villains often came pre-assigned. Someone remembered seeing a black man running down Riverglass Road earlier, around 10 p.m., though they weren't sure what time, or which direction, or whether it was even the victim. Then another claimed they saw a different black guy speeding that night. Rumors coalesced like storm clouds. At 1:47 p.m., someone called the tip line. I think I saw the killer last night, the caller warned breathlessly. Driving a beat-up Honda. Dark blue. Black male. 30s. They named a street. They named a house. They named Darius Holt. Ruiz and Mercer were dispatched before they could question the credibility. Darius had barely slept after the traffic stop. He was making coffee when the pounding on his door shook the frame. Police. Open up. His stomach dropped. When he opened the door, 2 detectives in plain clothes stood on his porch. One tall, sharp-eyed Latina, the other broad-shouldered with a calm but firm expression. Darius Holt? The woman asked. Yes. I'm Detective Ruiz. This is Detective Mercer. We'd like to ask you some questions. About what? About a homicide that occurred last night. His blood froze. What? I don't know anything about that. We still need you to come with us. Mercer's voice was gentle, but it didn't matter. The words felt like a sentence. Darius raised his hands instinctively. Am I under arrest? Not at the moment, Ruiz said, but her tone suggested yet. Neighbors watched from porches and windows. Their eyes said everything. Darius could feel his life unraveling in real time. At the station, questions came rapid fire. Where were you at 2 a.m.? Did you know Samuel King? Why were you on Riverglass Road? Were you carrying a gun? Why did someone report seeing your car speeding away? Darius tried to explain the traffic stop. Tried to emphasize that he'd gone straight home. Tried to insist he'd done nothing wrong. But the detectives kept circling back to the same point. You were on Riverglass Road last night. Yes, but... At the approximate time the victim was last seen alive. Yes, but... And you admit Officer Kaplan stopped you there? Yes, ask him. He'll confirm. Oh, we will, Ruiz said. But something in her expression made Darius's heart sink. She already suspected him. He could tell. When questioned, Officer Kaplan claimed the stop had taken place earlier than Darius reported, closer to 9:45 p.m. He said Darius appeared agitated, sweating, and evasive. He also claimed Darius had been driving erratically. Ruiz listened, arms crossed. Would you say he seemed capable of violence? She asked carefully. Kaplan paused. He was hostile. Hard to read. But yeah, there was something off about him. His phrasing wasn't explicit, but it didn't have to be. It carried the insinuation detectives were primed to hear. Ruiz thanked him and left, but Mercer felt uneasy. That felt biased, he murmured when they reached the hall. Ruiz frowned. Maybe. But the timeline lines up. And the tip corroborates the car description. Anonymous tips always corroborate something, Mercer muttered. What's that supposed to mean? It means we might be hearing what we expect to hear. Ruiz didn't respond. The case started to wobble almost immediately. The ME's report came in earlier than expected. Time of death between 1:30 and 1:50 a.m. Darius had been home by then. His neighbor's porch camera captured him pulling into his driveway at 11:18 p.m. That alone should have cleared him. But the district attorney dragged his feet. The footage isn't timestamp verified, he argued. Could be altered. Could be wrong. Mercer pushed back. Ruiz remained silent. Then came the ballistics analysis. The bullets that killed Samuel King didn't match any weapon registered in the state. They also didn't match any weapon Darius could access. Still, some detectives whispered, he could have tossed it. Or, he could have borrowed one. Or, people hide things. Confirmation bias had become the invisible third investigator in the room. The twist came from an unlikely place. A teenager named Lila Fenton had been driving home from a party on Riverglass Road the night of the murder. She hadn't come forward earlier because she feared getting in trouble for underage drinking. But guilt gnawed at her, and eventually she told her mother, who dragged her to the station. I saw a police car, Lila told detectives. Around 1:30, maybe 1:40. Parked in the trees. Lights off. Ruiz leaned forward. Are you sure? Yes. I even slowed down, 'cause I thought they'd pull me over. But they didn't. Do you see anyone else? Lila hesitated. I heard yelling, like an argument, but the rain was loud. I couldn't tell who it was. Male voices? One voice? Two. One. Maybe two. I don't know. But what? The officer's door was open. The room went silent. Mercer exchanged a glance with Ruiz. A heavy, meaningful one. They knew which patrol unit had been assigned to that stretch of road. Mark Kaplan's. Mercer pulled Kaplan's dash cam logs. The footage from that night was missing, flagged as corrupted. The internal GPS logs were intact, though. Kaplan had indeed been on Riverglass Road at 1:37 a.m. He had lied about going off shift at midnight. He had lied about patrolling a different zone. He had lied about nearly everything. And worse, there were earlier complaints in his file. 2 black motorists alleging aggressive stops. 1 excessive force allegation dropped after the complainant couldn't be located. A formal reprimand for tone and conduct unbecoming. No smoking gun, yet. But enough smoke to suggest a fire. Over the next 48 hours, Ruiz and Mercer rebuilt the real timeline. Samuel King, passing through town, had missed a turn due to rain and slowed on Riverglass Road. Kaplan, parked in ambush as he often did, likely pulled him over. The stop escalated. Samuel ran. Kaplan pursued. There was a struggle. Maybe Samuel tried to defend himself. Maybe he simply refused to get on the ground in the mud. And Kaplan shot him. Close range. In rage or panic or something darker. Then he wiped down the victim's pockets, ditched evidence, and tried to frame the only other black man he'd stopped that night. Darius Holt. It wasn't far-fetched. It was calculated. The interrogation room was small, gray, and humming with fluorescent tension when Kaplan was called back to clarify a few details. He looked annoyed, not nervous. That changed when Mercer dropped a folder on the table. Your GPS logs. Kaplan's eyes twitched. Your dash cam metadata. A bead of sweat formed. And a witness placing your cruiser at the scene at the time of the murder. Kaplan's face was drained of color. Ruiz leaned in. You lied to us. Repeatedly. I don't know what you're talking about, Kaplan hissed. You killed Samuel King, Ruiz said quietly. No. You shot him after an escalated stop, Mercer added. No. And then you framed Darius Holt. Kaplan slammed a fist on the table. That man is a thug. You people don't know. The sentence caught in his throat as he realized what he'd said, and what it confirmed. Ruiz's voice hardened. This wasn't policing. This was profiling. And then it became murder. Kaplan's breath hitched. Then the cracking began. He first blamed Samuel. said he'd been non-compliant. Then he blamed the weather. Then he blamed adrenaline. Eventually, with his voice trembling, he muttered, "He ran. I told him to stop. He kept running. I couldn't let him get away." "Why?" Ruiz pressed. "What was he running from?" Kaplan didn't answer. "Or who?" she added. Silence. Heavy. Breaking. Final. When Kaplan asked for a lawyer, Ruiz almost felt relieved. It was over. 2 days later, Darius Holt walked out of the station a free man. But not an untouched one. Reporters hounded him. He kept his head down. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Friends texted awkward apologies. Ruiz approached him quietly. "Darius, I'm truly sorry. We were wrong to suspect you." He nodded stiffly. "You weren't the only ones. If you ever want to file a complaint." "I don't want revenge," Darius said, voice cracking. "I just want my life back." Ruiz swallowed. "We'll make sure the truth is public." "That's something," he murmured. "I guess." But his eyes said otherwise. Braden Hill split down predictable lines. Some were outraged at Kaplan. Some were outraged that anyone believed he could do wrong. Some insisted it was just a tragic misunderstanding. Others said it was murder, plain and simple. The police department tried to distance itself, but the stain spread. People demanded reforms. Town halls grew heated. Samuel King's family arrived in grief and disbelief. Their pain rippled through the community. Darius attended the vigil for Samuel, standing quietly near the back. People thanked him for coming. A few apologized for suspecting him. But most avoided mentioning that they believed the worst of him almost instantly. 2 weeks after Kaplan's arrest, forensics uncovered something unexpected. Samuel King had recorded part of the traffic stop. His smartwatch, water-resistant and motion-activated, had captured a 37-second audio snippet. The file was damaged by rain, but fragments were clear enough. Kaplan shouting. Samuel pleaded. A threat. A gasp. Running footsteps. And then 3 shots. This recording removed any remaining doubt. Kaplan was charged with murder, obstruction, falsifying records, and civil rights violations. The case made statewide headlines. Braden Hill became synonymous with the fallout. Months later, Ruiz visited Riverglass Road alone. The spot where Samuel had fallen was no longer marked by tape, but the memory lingered in the trees. She thought about the chain reaction that had almost destroyed an innocent man. She thought about how close they'd come to solving the wrong case. She thought about how many times something like this had happened without anyone catching it. The rain began to fall. Soft, steady, cleansing. Ruiz whispered a promise into the quiet woods. "We'll do better." She hoped it was true. Because somewhere in town, in a small house with dim lights and a half-fixed Honda, a man named Darius Holt was trying to piece his life back together. Trying to trust the world again. Trying to believe that this time, justice had actually been served. And that next time, it wouldn't come so close to missing its mark.